Before you here is a Deluxe, Voyager, Leader, and Commander class Transformer. That's right, Deluxe, Voyager, Leader, and Commander. 25, 35, 55, and 90. Let's talk about Transformers size classes and why they're not size classes anymore.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and on today's video we're going to explain Transformers size classes. And there just really isn't a better term besides size classes or price points. I wanted to talk about this because it's come up a couple times on live streams and discussions with future like Hasbro reveals of Transformers. This is a topic that has evolved and changed over the course of Transformers history, and it's kind of like we're in an interesting place. Case in point, my example here. This is a tall Deluxe, this is a short Leader, that's a tall Voyager, and that's a small Commander, but they are all sold at the price points of Deluxe, Voyager, Leader, and Commander. And that was kind of my initial point here. The thing that has happened to Transformers is while we used to have size classes, we now have price points. So let's kind of explain what the current price points are for Transformers, and also kind of go over how things have evolved and shifted over the years. So if you think this will be an enjoyable video, hit the like button now or hit it later, because I appreciate the support to get this video out to more people, and subscribe to the notification bell to help the channel grow so we can make cool videos like this and others on the channel. So let's begin by talking about the difference between a size class and a price point. Now, as recent back as the Titans Return line, Transformer size classes pretty much used to follow the scaling system. How big is the final toy? This is going back to Beast Wars pretty much, because G1 and G2 was a little different. But in terms of scaling for Titans Return here, we had Legends class, Deluxe class, Voyager class, Leader class. And so you had this gradual progression of sizes. Almost all Deluxes were about this size, almost all Voyagers were about this size, almost all Leaders were about this size, almost all Legends were about this size, regardless of their complexity of transformation. And what would happen is that you would get some characters that needed more engineering, like Astro Train, to be really spectacular, having to rework the design to make sure it stayed in the size, scaling, and price budget of a Voyager. Whereas some other characters like Overlord maybe is a little less complicated so that the size can make up for it. And that's kind of how Transformers size scaling used to work. It has not been this way for a while, because starting with the Transformers War for Cybertron Siege line, we started getting some different variation as to what a class really is. So in Transformers Siege, which was a line that had pre-painted battle damage and everything, and I didn't appreciate that, that's a topic for a different video, this was kind of where we started to see prominent character take precedence over toy. So for example, Megatron here is a Voyager class, that way he's easily accessible at a nice, easy price point, and because they knew they could get several uses out of this mold, they put it in the Voyager. Whereas Shockwave, who is, as you can see in his main robot form, a little smaller than Megatron, he was at the Leader class price point, because there's not that many reuse potential for Shockwave. To make up for the price, they give you a bunch of junk that you probably don't want, but at least adds some playability factor with some extra armor and weapons. Though I could have done without this and just had a more bare-bones Shockwave, because the transformation on Shockwave isn't very complex either, but that was in order to ensure a nice, clean, very G1-looking robot mode, versus Megatron here, who has a little bit more junk to make sure his tank mode works. This is where the shift started to happen, where character prominence could put it in a higher price point to give it more engineering budget to pull off whatever trick it was wanting to do. I think the first time this became super apparent was with Hot Rod for Studio Series 86, because you put him next to Cup, and you're like, okay, these are both Deluxe class figures, right? Cup and Hot Rod, Deluxe class, because they're kind of like your standard size robots. Those would fit the Deluxe class. Well, here's the thing. Hot Rod was a Voyager class. And the reason why is because Cup here is a great figure, but he transforms into his vehicle mode. Whereas Hot Rod not only transforms into his vehicle mode, he has like engineering quirks. Like you can give him the flip down visor that he had in the movie, and it's engineered into the head. There's other little things like his hands can swap out, which they don't need to for transformation, but you can pull these panels down and you can swap his hand out for a peg, and you can give him an extra accessory. And he came with a bunch of accessories to accommodate this. And what's also really impressive about this guy is that he does transform into his car mode, which is a feat in and of itself that I'm not going to show you here, but he's incredibly slim. There's barely any robot kibble on him, and that is because he has a very in-depth, complex transformation. He even has opening and closing hand joints. So when you compare, like, all right, size-wise, this is a deluxe class. But engineering-wise, he's a deluxe class with Voyager price point engineering. Hot Rod was not sold at $35 because he is the size of a Voyager. He was sold at $35 so that extra $10 could go into the engineering to make him the best he could. And because he's Hot Rod, a very prominent, popular character, they could allow the budget to do that. If they tried to sell Cup at $35, he wouldn't have sold as well. So you have to just work him into the deluxe price point because there's not enough prominence of character to allow for that extra budget. Where with Hot Rod, you do have that prominence of character, therefore making a better figure. Now, the same trick that was done with Hot Rod was pulled with the Rodimus Prime. Because Rodimus Prime being his upgraded form, these visually kind of make sense toy-wise. This isn't a very show-accurate Rodimus Prime. The Hot Rod is a little bit more accurate, though it's still not quite the right colors. This is more, more Generations inspired, which is why it was in the Kingdom line versus Studio Series, where Hot Rod comes from. But they have the same thing. Hot Rod's a deluxe, sold at Voyager for the extra budget, and Rodimus Prime is a leader, sold at Commander for an extra budget. Now, this also means when you go to compare Rodimus Prime to his contemporaries, he seems a little lacking, and that's because his robot mode is not that large, whereas pretty much every other Commander class figure is a big, mighty beast of a figure. I say this having all of them. I did pull out an extreme example here because Armada Prime is pretty involved transformation-wise, much like how Rodimus Prime is. Now, Rodimus Prime did come with this big old box trailer that I have in a box because it doesn't do anything. It's just a battle platform. He doesn't combine with it. They didn't do anything interesting with it. It kind of just sits around and doesn't do anything in my collection, and so it kind of feels like I paid a lot for what was kind of a plussed-up leader class figure. But I will say, in Commander class's case, this is the only time this has happened. Every other Commander class has felt worth it in size, weight, and features. It's just this guy. Not so much. But this is the disparity of how you have class as a price point versus class as a size class. So with all that said, you can see how the shifting of landscapes has happened. Here is a current core class, deluxe class, Voyager class, and leader class figure from Legacy United. You can see the size disparity is not as big as it was during Titan's return. However, I think there is still a lot to talk about with each class, and I think we should explain each class by class of what is currently available on the market for mainline Transformers. No gimmick toys, just the mainline stuff. It is going to be kind of interesting to look at what is our current price points, time of recording, and what are the current classes of Transformers. So we're going to start with Core Class, the smallest class that we have of Transformers. They retail for $9.99 US, and they've been part of the line since Transformers Kingdom in 2021. There is a disparity to how Core Class is done. It has got a variety of things. So first things first, we have smaller versions of iconic characters. Soundwave here is a nice pocket-sized version of classic G1 Soundwave, and he even has a little non-transforming laser beak that goes in his chest. And that's pretty cool. It's kind of neat because there are several of these, but they are kind of your more prominent, more well-known characters in a smaller size class. That's kind of like for your little travel companion, or your little desk buddy, or your pocket transformer. Then Core Class also provides smaller characters that don't justify a deluxe class, like Tasmania Kid here. If you made him at deluxe class, you'd need to make him this size, and at that point, well, he might as well just be Core Class. And sometimes Core Class figures are a little bit smaller than they should be, or a little bit bigger. Tasmania Kid, I think, feels about right. But this is kind of like what I think Core Class should excel at, which is making these smaller characters. Then there's some interesting ones we've been seeing in Legacy United because it is the 40th anniversary. Cheetor from Beast Machines here probably should be like a Voyager class figure if we're going for traditional scaling, but this is all the Beast Machines Cheetor we're getting right now, and it's in a Core Class because Beast Machine's less popular. There's also like an Energon Megatron that's also probably shouldn't be in this class, but in a larger one, but Energon is not as popular. It's kind of a testing the waters phase. And then Studio Series has got several core class figures. There are some that are shrunk down versions of iconic characters. There's others like Red Guy here, who is a tape. He's a cassette tape for Soundwave, but because they could put him in his own size class, you can get the pile drivers, you can get the guns, which the previous like pack-in style version of the Red Guy and the Blue Guy didn't have. And so I think that is kind of a nice thing to do. It's kind of a beefed up pack-in figure, which I think works for me because I like it on my display. So that's kind of how core class goes. And it's interesting because we sort of fluctuate how many core class figures away. Sometimes it's only one new one, sometimes it's up to 3. And it's just kind of been fluctuating a little bit. And I'm kind of worried they might be discontinuing it because I really do like having these smaller characters, whether they're supposed to be small or if they're just nice pocket-sized versions of something that's larger. So when we say that Transformers size classes get confusing, Transformers Earthspark, the current Kids Focus line for the current Kids Focus show, is where some of that confusion lies. Because this is 2 more size classes, or 2 more price points. You could never tell they're their exact same size. So first things first, Thrash here is a Warrior class figure. He retails for $17.99 US, and there are others in the Warrior class. A little bit simpler to transform. Usually they have some kind of gimmick. His gimmick isn't really like anything. It's like, oh, he has a flip-out gun, and I'm like, yeah, that's not even spring-loaded. It's just a thing. So these are typically, you know, kind of your like mid-range, I guess, of your standard-sized figures. They still fully transform, and they're not super gimmicky. Then you have Deluxe class for Earthspark, which retail for $19.99 US, and that's not to be confused with Deluxe class for Generations that are $24.99. So it's sometimes a little bit smaller, sometimes a little bit bigger. With the Kids Focus lines like these, you're not going to get size scaling, like Optimus and Megatron are the same size as Nightshade, when that shouldn't be the case because they're a lot smaller than Optimus and Megatron. But that is just how it goes. There's not scaling so much between these, but they are 2 more price points, 2 more classes in between, and then one happens to share a name with the adult Focus lines like Studio Series and Legacy. So it's kind of a weird thing, but yeah, Warrior class, Deluxe class, they might as well be the same class. Alright, so Deluxe class is your kind of standard size Transformers for Studio Series and for Generations. This is your $24.99 US price point, and that is pretty much the size variance here. So we get some characters. I think Windblade is about an average size Deluxe. She's about the size that most are. Perceptor's a little bit taller. Perceptor's a little bit taller. I probably should have used him in my example of a tall Deluxe, but, you know, Trailbreaker here is also pretty tall. Sometimes you get guys like this. Now, these guys both have very simple transformations, so it kind of balances out that it's like, okay, they're bigger at this price point, but more simplified transformation. Whereas somebody like Mirage here, very complex transformation because they had to nail that Porsche car mode and make it perfect. Unfortunately, the robot mode kind of sucks because of it. But there is that, so you can see he's, you know, different size scaling. And then you get characters like Animated Bumblebee, who you don't want to be bigger than this. It just feels a little weird that he is the same price as Windblade when he's that much taller. But his engineering level is higher than what a core class could provide, and he is still bigger than a core class. So it's not like it's exactly like selling a core class at Deluxe price. And because it's Bumblebee, they can also afford to do that. So Deluxe class is kind of interesting. There's a wide variance in styles and stylings and sizes and shapes. Let's talk Voyager class. These retail for $34.99 US, and these I think are the most consistent price point we have. As you can see, all 4 of these are about the same size, which is pretty nice. There are, of course, exceptions. Like I mentioned Hot Rod earlier. He is a lot smaller, but we went over his engineering depth. And yeah, it's kind of nice to see a price point that actually feels like it's always worth it. Usually Voyagers feel pretty worth it because if they're, you know, less complicated like Blaster, they're the right size. If they're more complicated like Prime, well, his legs are less complicated, so he kind of ends up balancing the size. And then you have gems like Cybertron Starscream and even Beast Wars Silverbolt. I think Silverbolt is a great example of a Voyager because he's got a very large alt mode as well. So I don't really complain about Voyager pricing, and usually they always feel worth it. And I think it's kind of nice they are all about the same size. They are a step up from Deluxe, Where's an example of a Deluxe? Why do I not have this? You know, they are a step up in size from Deluxe class on the average, and I think overall they're pretty good and pretty solid and usually worth the $35, in at least my opinion. That may vary and differ from people to people, but I think they're usually pretty solid overall. And it would be nice to see like more Voyagers kind of take some more risks. I think that there's a lot of really cool stuff. Like I think Starscream over here having technically like more features than the original toy is pretty great. So I like a lot of what is going on in Voyager. The thing that may confuse people about Voyager class though is why is it called Voyager class? It doesn't really make any sense anymore. Well, that's the thing. We've had the terms Deluxe, Voyager, and Leader since 2005 with Transformers Cybertron. On the years prior, they changed every time they changed series. So Beast Wars, Beast Machines, RID, Armada, and Energon all had different names for each size class. But starting in Cybertron, we got Deluxe, Voyager, Leader, and a couple others that we don't use anymore. And ever since then, we've been using those. So why are they called Voyager? Well, it's because Cybertron was more of a spacefaring season. So it was like, oh, the Voyager class are the ones that can voyage on their own or something like that. But it's kind of funny that we've just been using Voyager class like, you know, left and right, when really it doesn't have actually any sense to the name at all anymore. And the name thing goes for Leader class as well. These retail for $54.99 and have the most variance in size and accessories and engineering of any of the price points. This also used to be, like back in Cybertron, it was all Leaders. And so it's funny because sometimes we get Leaders, like with Studio Series over here, we got Optimus Primal and Scourge, leader of Maximals and Terrorcons. Sandstorm isn't a leader, Tigerhawk isn't a leader. Most of the leaders that we get aren't actually leaders. Again, I think we have a name thing. If we just stuck to the names, we've used it all these years. But the thing I point out with Leader class is that you're paying for the engineering, not for the size. Case in point, look at the wide variance here in size. So let's start with what I would call like a true Leader class. And that is going to be Tigerhawk here. Very large figure. As you can see, he's got very big wings. Very large size, very impressive size, very much what you think when you think Leader class. At least if you've been collecting Transformers a long time. I think the perception of what Leader class is will shift over time as collectors have different starting points. For me, this feels like what a Leader class should be. Big, imposing, large size figure you couldn't do elsewhere. Now, he is a little bit simpler to transform than everybody else on screen, and I think that does help with his size, but I do appreciate that he is in the right scale. Then we get to somebody like Sandstorm, and Sandstorm is not like really Leader class size, right? Like he's Blaster size, and Blaster's a Voyager. But Sandstorm is a triple changer, and he needed that engineering budget because he has the impossible task of transforming from the most square, boxy dune buggy you've ever seen to a very round helicopter, and pulling off the illusion amazingly well. It is incredible owning this figure and going between the modes, kind of going, wait, how did they do that? And it's all a pretty good trick of the eye and a really nice illusion, and that is worth it to me. I feel like for $55 you're getting a really well-engineered figure. He may not be the biggest, but getting him between the two modes is actually kind of miraculous to watch unfold, and I think that is also a good benefit of Leader. Then you got Studio Series Optimus Primal, who definitely feels like a Voyager. He's a little plussed up in engineering, and he's got a lot of extra paint detail. He does come with some extra accessories to kind of bulk out his price point, but it would have been nice if there was like a class between Voyager and Leader that he could have released in, because he definitely isn't a Voyager, but he's definitely not up to the same snuff as the other leaders. And then you have Scourge, also from Rise of the Beasts, who does not really come with any extra accessories, but does feel Leader class. He is large. He's got a complex transformation to get to his truck mode. You can see here he is almost about the same height as Tigerhawk. I got Tigerhawk a little splayed to balance him, but he is about the same size as Tigerhawk, so he feels closer to true Leader, though it definitely is a Leader price point due to paint and engineering. But also, I wouldn't see him as a Voyager. I wouldn't see him as anything less. He makes sense to be at Leader. So I think the thing I'm kind of coming to the conclusion of, and it's been discussed on live streams as we've talked about it, especially with the controversial Studio Series Springer that's coming up. I think we need another price point. I think we need something between Voyager and Leader. Something where you can have a bit of a price bump, so that way you can get extra engineering in for like triple changers and such, but not have to go all the way up to Leader to where people start feeling like the class price point isn't worth it anymore. Because there's amazing Leader class figures that feel fully worth it, including Sandstorm, who you could argue is a plussed up Voyager, but I argue is a Leader in full engineering skill. But there are some, like Optimus Primal, that probably could have been in a class between. Back in Transformers Cybertron, between Voyager and Leader, we had the Ultra class, which were slightly larger figures that weren't quite as big as the Leaders. And I think something like Ultra class, even if it doesn't use that name, is something we kind of need right now as the budget shift on Transformers. Now, I don't know the official logistics of how that would work with retailers and how that would work with the overall product management, because it's not my department, I don't work at the company. But if anyone from Hasbro is watching, I would consider maybe looking into a price point between Voyager and Leader if you haven't already, because I think that would also help a lot of fans, and I think you could also sell more figures because you would have a little bit more wiggle room in the budgets there. That's just me looking from the outside as an observer, just a suggestion I have. But of course, I think that in general, it's not too bad if we get two figures like this, like where it feels like Tigerhawk's just about right. And Tigerhawk, Sandstorm feels right. Let's go with this. Tigerhawk feels about right for the $55 price point. Primal feels a little much at $55, but they kind of balance each other out in the grand scheme of things. It's just, I do wish we did have a price point between. But if that's not physically possible, that's also okay, because at least there's figures like Sandstorm. While he's not Leader sized, he's definitely Leader in value, and I think that is super fun. So next that brings us to Commander class, a class introduced in Transformers Siege with Jetfire, who I would have pulled out, but he's in the back of my shelf, and I didn't want to knock everything over. Commander class is interesting. It's like once a year, we do now one Legacy and one Studio Series per year, and the way they kind of go is that we get just one pretty big dude, or Rodimus Prime, which I already talked about. I'm not going to harp on that guy too much, he's fine. Ultra Magnus here is kind of one of those not as big as some of the Generations Commander classes, but he still feels substantial at Commander class, especially when you convert him into his car carrier mode and he's able to carry multiple deluxe cars inside of him. That's pretty impressive. Plus he has neat engineering gimmicks like the flip open chest plate. So there's a lot of reason to go with, you know, some people might be like, oh, he's overpriced. I think he's perfectly substantial at Commander class, and you can watch my whole review if you want to see why I think that. I've done reviews on Commander class. I love Commander class, by the way. Probably, I think I like Voyager the most out of the main ones, but I love Commander class. I have all of them. So Motormaster here, which as you can see is very tall. Motormaster is interesting because he doesn't come like this. This is Menasor. This is with 4 deluxe Transformer cars. But Motormaster himself as a commander came with the exoskeleton. So anything that's not like a colored car was the Motormaster. And he's also like a robot in the torso. So it's kind of like a combiner skeleton is another option for commander. Or you can have big, highly engineered characters. So I think Commander has a lot of options. I really do like it. And like I said, I have all of them because every one of them feels worth it. It's just Rodimus didn't feel as much worth it, but in the end, I think it's the most solid price point we've got because they really have done a good job making them all feel worth it. And I can't wait to get Magmatron, and I'll probably review Magmatron because it's a Beast Wars character and it looks really cool and I want to talk about it on camera. But Commander class is pretty cool, and I think it's overall doing a great job. Forgive me, dear viewer, for I'm not pulling my Titan class figures off the shelf. Titan class is the largest, the biggest Titan size Transformers. They retail for $109.99 now, which is it's a creeped up price point since they started. They started with 2014's Metroplex, who was kind of a G1 Fall Cybertron hybrid. We got Combiner Wars Devastator, who was a combiner, which was pretty cool, but they, for the most part, are city bots. We, of course, have Fortress Maximus. The next one, I believe, was Triptychon. Then we got Omega Supreme. Then we finally got my boy Scorponok, and then they repainted him into Black Zarak. And then we got Cybertron Metroplex recently, and Armada Tidal Wave is coming up. I did skip the Nemesis, and I skipped Predakings. I didn't like the Predaking look, and I didn't feel like I needed Nemesis. I have the Arc, but it's not even on display because I don't have room at the moment. But yeah, Titan class, not always worth it, but it's always really cool to just get a gigantic Transformer. But I will say in general that Titan class doesn't always feel worth it the way that Commander class does. But as you can see, I still ended up with a bunch of these anyways. I'm not exactly sure how many I paid full price for. I think I paid full price for Zarak and Scorponok, because they're like my favorite. I definitely paid full price for Devastator, because I got the Takar release. But I think the others I got on sale, if I could. They do tend to hang around a little bit longer. But yeah, Titan class is kind of interesting, because we're starting to, I think, reach the limit, not only on who they can make in the class, but also who I can fit on my shelf. Jeez. Okay, so at the end of the day, Transformers size classes aren't size classes anymore. They're price points. And that's totally fine, because look how amazing all these figures are. Okay, yeah, some of these aren't as amazing as others, but in general, I think, like, Legacy's on fire, Studio Series doing a pretty great job. We're in a good age of Transformers. It's just kind of, yeah, I think for older collectors, taking a little bit of time for us to get into the mentality that's, oh right, it's a price point, not a size class, because for so long it was a size class. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that in the future, but we may need some more price points just to kind of balance things out. And I hope for those that have been collecting Transformers recently and haven't quite understood what each class is, I hope you have a better understanding of that. And if you are still lacking some information, hit the comments down below and leave any questions you have. This can be kind of a confusing topic, and it can kind of be like, you know, throwing out maybe a little too much information at once. So if you have any questions, please let me know down below. I'll do my best to answer them, or somebody else might pop in and answer them. It's a nice little community we got here. Of course, hit like and subscribe if you want to see more Transformers videos on the channel. Like I said, I'll probably review Megatron. I got a bunch of other older Transformers videos you can go check out. I've been reviewing Commander classes in the last couple years. And don't forget the Transformers Rundown. Those are kind of fun. We look at an entire year's worth of Transformers in one video, which is chaotic, but again, an adventure. It's fun. I like it. If you want to continue the conversation, though, come check out our Monday live streams on this YouTube channel every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern, or join our Discord server in the link below to continue chatting about all kinds of cool stuff. If you want to help support the channel directly and help the channel grow and continue to do cool videos, please consider joining as a channel member. There are perks like member-exclusive live streams, early access to videos, and other cool shout-outs. So check that out, and let's give a special shout out to some of our channel members. Special shout out to our channel members, including our Captain Tiers, Infinity Wartorn, Spin-54, Super Shadix Boom, Toma K, Jamie's World, SSJ4 Jason, Psycho O's, Master Bin 95, Ramon Gray, Muhammad Faiz Daniel, Sutargo's the Kaiju from Krypton. Thank you all for your support. If you want to find me elsewhere, you can find me on social media across most platforms at Soundout12. You can find my wonderful graphic designer on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643. You can also find Hero Club at hero-club.com for news and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, transform and roll out.